Hello there, my name is Rem and I founded my own game studio Roofkat about 5 months ago now. With Roofkat I've been doing a lot of contracting work for Sumo Digital, a company in the UK. But anytime that I'm not working on that, I'm basically working on my own indie project called WarpThrough. WarpThrough is meant to be a year-long project, which means that now, about 5-6 months in, is about the midway point, hopefully. So I thought that now would be a good time to look back at what I've been doing and look at what I can improve for the future. To give you a bit of an idea of what WarpThrough is, it's a platformer where you warp through as many dimensions as possible while fighting monsters without having a dedicated attack button. It's a game with only 4 buttons, the directional keys, that you use for platforming, but also if you stop pressing any of those keys, you charge up your attack, and the next time you press a key, you actually fire that attack. It's also got some roguelite elements where if you die, you restart. And it's very much about being easy to learn and hard to master. So the first time you play the game, you may reach Warp 3, but then the next time you get a lot of dimensions further, and you keep kind of getting further and sort of understanding the game more and more. And that is WarpThrough. So, there's a couple of goals that I have with WarpThrough. One of them is that I want to try and create a game all by myself. There's a couple of reasons for this. First of all, I've been working in teams for the past 4 years. First in university, I worked in teams ranging from about 8 to 18 people. And then during my internship at Sumo Digital, which is also why I later got that contracting opportunity, the team was around 70 to 80 people. So now I was curious to try and kind of flip that around and now do an entire game all by myself. It was a lot of work. It was a lot of fun working in teams. That was really great. And I definitely want to go back to that after WarpThrough. But now I really want to try and experience that all by myself. One of the other reasons for that is that if I work in a team, it is super useful if I understand what the other people are doing. So if I'm working with an audio designer, that I actually know a little bit about making music and a little bit about making sound effects. So that's also what this project is for me to figure out all the different areas of development that I really haven't had any experience in, such as audio. This has been the first time I actually tried and create my own music track, which is crazy. And I've got a lot of help from an audio designer that is awesome and wanted to help me out. But yeah, so that's another reason for me to try and do a solo project, trying out all the different areas of game development that I just haven't gotten the chance to try yet. Then there's also the issue of, since I'm doing work for Sumo Digital, I can't work full-time on WarpThrough, so it would be a bit tricky if I'm only there in, for example, the evenings, and someone else might actually be hired, let's say, to work on it full time. This could work out, but right now this might be just a little bit easier. Those are the reasons that I am going lone wolf or lone roofkat into WarpThrough. There's obviously a bunch of pros and cons to working as a solo developer. Starting with the negative aspects of being a lone wolf or a lone roofkat, is that obviously as a solo developer, if that is really your goal, you have to really do everything yourself. For example, I was trying to make an online leaderboard and I was like, I have no idea how to do this and how to start on this, and it took me a number of weeks. Luckily I was working on other things at the time, but it took me a number of weeks before I finally sort of got over that mental blockade and actually started working on it and got it to work. I'm so happy that it works. On the other hand, that is also kind of a good thing, because that means that you can't just delegate a task to someone if you think it's difficult or if you can't do it. You actually have to end up learning it. So that's a sneaky bit of a positive into the first thing on the negative list. But then that having to do everything also includes promotional and marketing related work. Now, I've actually found it very interesting to think about marketing strategies, but doing something like preparing a screenshot, preparing a video, making a video like this, it means that during the time I'm working on this, I'm not working on the game. And that feels really weird. I know that it's an important part of being an indie developer, is making yourself known, but it just feels very odd to promote a game while during that time that you're promoting the game you could also be working on making that game better. So that's just a weird internal hurdle to get over, I guess. Then I guess the main things I've struggled with, and both have a little bit of an asterisk on them, is that you can't bounce ideas off of other people if you're just a solo developer, and you have no one to either boost your motivation or to be motivated for. I know this doesn't work for everybody, but for myself, if I come into work doing, for example, the school projects, if I was leading a team, I was motivated because I wanted to work with the team and I wanted everyone else to be motivated. So then you boost up your own motivation meter to try and make sure that everyone else also feels excited and ready to work. And also when I was working at Sumo Digital as a level designer, it also allowed me to just, when I come into work, just be a little bit extra motivated. And it's not really, it doesn't feel like you're faking it. It just feels like you're genuinely getting a little bit of extra motivation and able to be a little bit more motivated because you're around other people. And that doesn't exactly work if you're a solo developer. As I mentioned, there's a bit of an asterisk on both the can't bounce ideas off of other people and no one to boost your motivation or be motivated for. And that's that I have an amazing girlfriend who I live with now. So that means that when I am working on WarpThrough and I have some idea and I'm really struggling with what to do with it, then I can bounce ideas off of her. And she's a game artist, so she knows a bunch about the games industry. So that is really cool, and if you are thinking of doing solo development, I would definitely recommend being around people that can help you out and that you can just still bounce ideas off of, even though you may not actually be directly working with them. So I guess that's the negative sides of things. Now, onto the positive side of things. I think the most obvious positive thing about being a solo developer is that you have full creative control. You don't really have to convince anyone other than yourself, which does definitely happen sometimes, but you don't have to convince anyone else that what you're thinking of is actually a good idea. Now, I actually also find it really fun to work with other people and collaboratively sort of share all of your ideas and your perspectives and try and create that into a cohesive vision. And I really quite like that, which is why I think that having full creative control over your own solo game is not as big of a point as I thought it would be. It's not as important as I thought it would be, but it is still quite important. It still has a lot of value because, yeah, you can really enact your own vision. You can really bring to life what you see, basically. Now, I did really enjoy setting up my own systems and sort of figuring out how I'm going to make this game all by myself. Because there's nobody waiting for me, there's no programmer that is asking me how this system should be set up. Because I can just set it up myself, and then if I figure out that I actually want it differently, I can just go in and change it. And that's really fun. I really like being able to both design and program and implement and make the art for all of the systems, because that means that I know how it works. Now, obviously, there's the other really big positive part for me, which is exploring all the areas of development. This I already mentioned. I just really want to try all the different things that I haven't gotten a chance to try yet. So that's most of how I experienced working solo on WarpThrough until now. On to the next thing. So, in order for me to finish WarpThrough within a year, I need to keep my scope, that is to say, how big the game actually becomes, I need to keep that as small as possible. And there's this common element in the games industry, this common known issue where the more you work on the game, the more you figure out, oh, I want to add this and I want to change this. It's called scope creep. It's basically where, yeah, your game just keeps getting bigger as you're developing it and you can never finish it. I think I've been doing a pretty decent job of trying to avoid that. Especially with trying to add in whole new features. But one aspect that has increased in scope over time is the narrative. So in order to do this initially, I had just some small dialogue elements in mind, but I've started to view them more as like an hour-long type campaign where you're really just trying to go through a story. And that change definitely increased my scope. But I'm okay with that because that means that I can accomplish the goal of having interesting. That's a molar. Of having interesting narrative in the game, and that's an important enough goal for me to warrant having a bit higher of a scope. So one interesting aspect of developing WarpThrough that has helped me a lot is showcasing. I have been showcasing at some like smaller conventions where there's mostly game developers before, and that helps out. But what helped me out most was going to this event in Germany called MAG, M-A-G, Manga, Anime, and Games Convention. So it wasn't just about games, but it really helped go there because it allowed me to actually see gamers play my game. This was super motivating because it's fun to see people actually coming to play your game, not just because they're your friends or they're other developers that are just interested in what's going on, but because they actually want to play your game. And there was actually a team of guys that just kept coming back. They literally came back 5 times spread over 2 days, and they played for numerous hours because I had a high score, and they just kept wanting to beat their own high score. And that's amazing. It's so cool to see that people want, basically confirm that people want your game, that they like your game. And I think it's really easy to sometimes just sort of sink into that hole of nobody's ever going to like my game, nobody's ever going to buy or see my game. And this was a great way to not have that. So that's why I think MAG and just showcasing in general has been really important for me developing WarpThrough up until now. So where am I now with WarpThrough? WarpThrough basically has its first horizontal slice done, which means that you can play the game from start to finish, but it's just all placeholder. Like there's a lot of text that instead of having an actual dialogue, it says work in progress. Here, Charlotte should say something about how cool this dimension is. It's just all like very placeholder, and there's a bunch of stuff missing. There's some scenes missing. But it gives me a very good idea of how is all of this going to progress, and I can sort of, now that I've laid this initial foundation and I just know, okay, this is how the levels are going to go, are going to come after each other, this is when you unlock that, this is when that happens. Now I can really start sort of polishing up, and I'm starting at the beginning, I'm starting at the introduction and the initial first level. And I'm really starting to polish up first the gameplay and stuff like animations and that sort of stuff, and then just really working my way through that foundation that I laid, which I think will make all of that a lot easier. I've also proved out all of the elements that I really wasn't sure about, whether I could do them or not, such as making an online leaderboard, such as making audio, because I'd never made audio before. And thanks to the help of an amazing audio designer, I now have a bit of a better idea of how to make music and how to make sound effects and all that sort of stuff. So that's really cool, and I'm very happy that, I'm in a pretty good state with WarpThrough right now. There is one thing that I really have to improve on with WarpThrough, and that is planning. I think that up until recently it was okay to have a pretty loose planning, because I was still figuring out what exactly I wanted to do with the narrative. I was still figuring out how exactly I wanted some things to go, and it's not very useful if you're trying to fully map out how to get from A to B if you've not fully defined what B is. But now I have a pretty good idea of what that product is that I want to aim for. And so I think it would be a great idea to now really start planning for it. And this is kind of this balancing act that I have to get a little bit better at, because I just don't spend enough time on planning and I just make stuff. And to some degree, for the first bit of WarpThrough, that was nice. But I think that for the next 6-ish months that I work on WarpThrough, I should be a little bit more prepared. And that will also allow me to actually figure out how doable it is to make this within 6 months. Because I know that there's so many small things like making a menu and making like all little customizable things and making sure that, well, that you can't cheat in the leaderboard as easily. And there's just so many small things that come up that I really still need to figure out. So that's what I'm going to be planning next, and I'm going to be polishing up sort of a demo vertical slice level as well. So that's been my experience working on WarpThrough so far. For myself, making this video has been kind of interesting because it allows me to really reflect on what I've been doing so far, and well, for example, that I really need to start planning more. I hope this has also been interesting, maybe even helpful, or entertaining at least. Yeah, if you would like to follow more development on WarpThrough, please follow the Facebook page Roofkat Games, and you can also find that on warpthrough.com, and you can, I think I also put the link to the Discord on there. I have a Discord with like 5 people, but if you would like to be a bit involved in the development and sort of tell me, hey, I have some cool ideas or something, you're very welcome to join that. And I'm trying to also give some updates over there. And I've also got a Twitter, which is also Roofkat Games. So yeah, I hope this was somewhat informative, interesting, entertaining, helpful, or anything like that. And I hope you have a nice day. Take care.